And I'm Casie. Hey, Dark Hearts. Hey.
The second episode of the new, it's not a new year, but
I know. I wanted to say that the whole last time too. Like, New Year. It's
like,
not.
it's just a new season.
I suppose we could break these down into seasons if we had wanted to, but at this point, I'm like,
why bother? I agree.
Right.
So yeah, same thing, same drill, back in school. That's it. Just, nothing is new since the last time you heard our voices, so.
No, and actually, won't lie, full disclaimer, this is our second one we're recording in a row, because your girls are trying to stay ahead of the game, especially because with kids back in school full-time, I will now be working full-time, and so if we can just have a few episodes of pre-recorded, responsible adults.
Yeah, it makes it easier, so we're doing them both, so literally nothing has changed from the last hour. No, it's okay, but nothing really will have changed. I mean, it's just, work and school and dogs and, that's about it.
Yeah, that's where we're at, y'all. So, hopefully there might be, our goal is to have a few at least pre-recorded.
Yes, to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, like I'm sure the professional podcasts that have sponsors and shit actually do.
Yeah.
But also,
it's also like their job, so.
Right. I was like, that's also, like, if this is literally all we did.
Yeah, then it would be fine. But it's not, turns out.
No.
But it's like a full-time job, some of the stuff we do, so.
It is. We just don't get paid for it.
Right.
Damn. I mean, we kind of do. Thank you to our patrons. You guys actually helped us with some of the stuff that we are trying to do here in the future. So.
Slow and steady.
And also, you guys, if you can't, again, like, we appreciate the patrons, but you're just listening to us. And again, doing all the free shit that you can to help us out. Rating, reviewing, sharing episodes. Like, that means so much to us. You have no idea.
Yeah, totally. Agreed. So that's where we're at. And it's my turn today. So we are going to Arkansas City in Kansas. They call it Ark City. It's spelled like AR Kansas, so also Arkansas, if one would see, but it is pronounced Arkansas. But they just call it Ark City.
I just listened to a small town murder episode that took place in Ark City.
What was the name?
But it's like a year ago. It's funny because because I'm way behind on all my podcast listening.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I know I took a screenshot of it because I was like, oh, hey.
That's so funny. Okay, well, I'm glad then. I was like, gosh, you probably know it. It's like fresh in your mind then, but it's obviously
No, it's not, because all I remember is Ark City because they call it Ark. Like, they call it Ark. Because why isn't it Arkansas? And
I know.
Why isn't it Arkansas?
I was very confused. And when they said we call it Ark City, I was like, okay, good. Because I would like to say Ark City instead of trying to remember it's not Arkansas. Arkansas.
Yes.
Like, what?
Yes.
Yeah, that's odd. That is odd.
I had a brief panic attack that it was going to be like when we tried to record them on the other day, and then it was a case we covered. I know. But no, I remember distinctly the guys talking about it on My Favorite Murder.
Okay. So it was not us. Okay.
No.
Perfect, because I did not remember this one. However, it's an interesting one, and I actually came across this on. There's a show on Hulu which is where I watched like the first season and then I saw the second season, and it's called How I Caught My Killer. And so I watched season 2, episode 9 of this, and the episode was called They Did Never Find the Body. There are a few other shows on it. I only watched this one because I felt like it actually covered it quite well. And then I used several sources in online, and I have all that. I can link all that. Just a bunch of different crime things, because this one is a same time frame almost as our last episode, kind of early 2000s, and there actually was a decent amount of information. However, I always get really mad when the cases aren't on Wikipedia. Is it just me, or do you ever use that? Because like when I go on there, some of them are on there.
Oh no,
really
I do.
Detailed. But this one was not. I was pissed. I was like, why does this not get its own Wikipedia page,
Well, that's where I was shocked, because I tried even Wikipedia for Jill's case, and there was nothing there, and even for her murder. And so I was very confused on that, because I mean, obviously I get that anyone can like edit Wikipedia, and I'm not using it as my end all be all,
right?
But it's nice to have stuff so then I can be like, oh, let me go verify this information.
Because it's like legit usually,
Yes.
So I agree. So it was not on there, but I did find a lot of different sources that were pretty good, I want to say. And there's some other podcasts and stuff. I had read some of their transcripts to like verify information that I had. So, but yeah, like I said, there's a couple other shows. I should have put those in here, but I'm sure if you just Google her name, it'll pop up. So this Arc City, we're going to go with Arc City here.
Yes.
It's the kind of town that, once again, I feel like all of our cases, and maybe it's just like Midwest area, Heartland, like everybody knows everybody type of thing, but they were huge on like Friday night football. That was kind of the thing that brought everyone together. And the town was about a population of like 13,000. So not tiny, but not big.
Small enough for small town murder to cover it.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So, it was described to as the people, they don't lock their doors. And I thought, what day and age are we going to stop saying that? And when are people going to stop doing that? Like, it just, it's funny.
Like if it was the 1980s, okay. But
yeah,
like 2000, are we still not?
And after all the people that get killed, it's like, okay, well, I bet you guys are locking your doors now, but
I guess I'm trying to think if in 2000, living in the small town that I did, but mine was like 3,000 people. You know what I mean? If
mine was
did
like 7,000, but we still locked our doors.
I'm pretty sure while we were gone, we still locked ours, but we also got to the point where we had those key code doors,
so you
we
could
didn't have to worry about
carrying the yeah, that's. I remember like every night before we'd go to bed and stuff, I remember my dad would always check all the doors and just make sure they were like locked. But like then there
your
was
dad
other
was also
times...
part of that case.
Oh yeah. Fair. Okay. So yeah, that's a fair point. But there were times too that they leave the front door open, like just come through the front door, like it's fine, and I mean
if we were home,
we would leave it open, I think sometimes, which is kind of funny to me now that they would lock it at night. And I think about, but like I think during the day that we came home from school, we had like a key. I don't really remember. It's kind of funny how that kind of stuff fades in your memory,
Right. Well, it's funny now because even with me being home, my front door is locked.
Oh yeah.
Unless 100%. I have it open to get the screen door open, but even then I lock the screen door, which listen, I get that could be easily busted.
Yeah.
But like I'd hear it at least.
Yeah. Give a heads up. Your dogs would hear it and alert you, and
yeah.
I have my screen door locked and my front door locked, and I always just do it. And then anytime someone's at my house and they leave, I'm like, oh, sorry, it's like triple lock because I know it's the middle of the day on a Tuesday or whatever. But you just never. Listen, I feel like if you're just in the habit of doing it, then it won't get missed, and then you can't question yourself. Like, shit, did I leave it unlocked?
Exactly. Also, with the fact that we research so much true crime.
Yeah, I think we automatically lean towards the err on the side of caution. So
yes. So okay, Arc City, they still don't lock their doors in 2000.
I guess not. I mean, that's how it was described. That really doesn't necessarily have anything to do with this case specifically, but it just is a good reminder of the kind of town we're talking about, I guess. I don't know. Just made me kind of laugh. So we're actually going to be talking about Jodi Sanderholm. So Jodi was the youngest of her siblings. I don't know how many siblings she actually had. I know for sure I'll talk a lot about her older sister, but and she was just super close with her family. Her mom described her as a brown-eyed, brown-haired beauty, which she was. You'll see when I post pictures of her, just gorgeous. And she was really the star of her high school dance team. So she was like the captain, did a lot of the choreography, all the things, but she also was really focused on her schoolwork, and she was actually the valedictorian of her class in 2006, and that is not an easy thing to do. So go Jodi. And plus I think a lot of like sports things and stuff like that, you have to have good grades to compete, in high school. So like she probably kept her grades up for that too. So they, like on that documentary I watched, there is like a clip of her speech at the graduation, because the valedictorian always gives their speech, and she was a little just ironic because she talked in there about how hard high school can be, but what kept everybody going was the fact that they were looking forward to their futures and what that held. So just a little piece of like, oh, okay, I can see some foreshadowing here. But she, so on January 5th of 2007, Jodi's sister, her name was Jennifer, she was pregnant, like super pregnant, about to give birth at any point. She knew she was having a girl, and Jodi was over the moon excited about it, talked about it all the time. That's all she cared about. She was just so excited. So on that specific day, Jennifer and her friend went to the mall because her friend was convinced that if they walked to the mall long enough, she'd go into labor, which I do have to say that worked for me. I was at the mall, not like walking, but it was before I had my daughter. It was like a few days before Christmas, and I was there finishing Christmas shopping, and that night I did go into labor. So I'm going to go ahead and chalk it up to that work. So anyway, they're at the mall, and Jennifer gets a call from her mom while she's there, and her mom's like, hey, I can't get a hold of Jodi. She's not answering any of my calls, but if you call her, she's going to answer for sure, because she's going to think you're in labor, and she had plans to like be there. Like they were super close. And so she's like, all right. So she calls her, goes to voicemail. She said she waited like 5 minutes, and it just didn't sit right with her because she thought that was really weird that she would not have answered. And so calls again, and of course she doesn't answer. So she calls her mom back and is like, something's wrong. She's not answering, and that's not her. And they knew her schedule, and at that point she would have been free to answer the phone. So like her schedule was really scheduled down to the minute, basically. So she was actually attending Cowley College in Arp City. So it's kind of a similar situation to the last episode we did, because she still lived at home. And I don't know if it was like a community college or what exactly, but she lived at home with her parents, and she was only 19. So, but she still attended college there. So
See,
up for college,
19
apparently.
too.
See, that's weird. Yeah, that's crazy. In both J names and stuff. So, okay. But yeah, so her schedule was that she had her classes like all morning long. Then she went to the dance practice because she was dancing on the college team there too now, because she was really good and she was leading a lot of that too. And she would normally be done with that around lunch and would usually head home. She would eat, shower, and then get ready for the rest of the day. I don't know if she worked or did any of that. It didn't really say. Once again, it's kind of funny when we say this isn't that old of a case, because it kind of is. Like for us, both of those, the one last week's episode that you guys
I know.
Like they're like the same time frame, and that was still 20 years ago about.
Well,
like, isn't it funny? It doesn't feel old.
Jodi's the same age as me because she graduated in 2006 as well. And so I'm like, but yeah, no, 2006, we're going on close to 20 years now.
I know. I actually thought of that because I was like, I think she's Casie's age, because I was like, oh, like it's crazy when it's someone close to your age, and then, you hear these stories. You're like, oh my gosh, that could happen to anybody, Anyway. So another thing though, like she had a very specific routine, she'd get home, she would grab the mail on her way inside, and she would always like lay it on the table. And so on January 5th, there was a break in that routine. And this is kind of when they start to notice that something is wrong. That day, Jodi's dad, Brian, he got home and he noticed that the mail, it wasn't in the mailbox. So, okay, she had brought it in, but it also wasn't anywhere inside the house. So he was able to determine, like, okay, Jodi was obviously here at some point. I mean, I guess someone could have stolen the mail as well. That's not the case here, but just, I guess, keeping a, broader mindset there. But it was not in the house. And so that was really weird and out of character, because that was like always the thing, just how it works. So when she hasn't shown up and it's like dinner time, then the parents, they call the police, because that's weird. It's so funny. This is a lot of similarities to the last week's case. A lot. Like when you were talking about it too, I was kind of like, it's like so many weird patterns that hopefully like this helps people learn from things too. I mean, not that these girls did anything wrong, but like it's just to be so aware of things, and how sometimes a simple break in your pattern is enough to like know that something's wrong, to be aware of those things. I guess. I don't know.
I guess I'm so random and all over the place. I don't think anyone would notice.
I know. Oops. Yeah, I don't know that I would notice that either, but I guess like if her dad was used to always reading the mail, I don't know. And I mean, the fact that she lived with her parents probably helped with this case a little bit too, because someone else wouldn't necessarily even know that anything was wrong because of that. So okay, so the police chief at the time, his name is Sean Wallace, he got a call from Brian Sanderholm, and he knew him a little bit because small town, and his sons had actually gone to high school with Jodi. So like they knew of each other and stuff. So, Brian was super worked up and concerned, and he just basically reassured him, like, I'm sure it's fine. 99% of the time, there's just miscommunications. It could be something random. Her phone could have died and her car could have died somewhere, whatever. So he tried to really just like keep him calm. But Brian, like, just assured him that this was not the kind of relationship that they had with Jodi, and that she would have found a way to reach out regardless if something had happened. So they were really just trying to piece together if she had left with someone, if she was taken. Jennifer said the whole time she just thought of her like in a ditch, in her car, stuck, needing help. And that's kind of where their minds were going. But they also knew that she had several admirers in the community. She was just gorgeous, very involved. A lot of guys were very interested in her. And of course, being on the dance team, like, you're well known to the community because you're seen at all these events. So
Exactly, especially a smaller town.
yeah,
I'm sure the college sporting events and thus the dance team are the thing people do.
Totally. I know they were like, Friday Night Lights is the vibe here, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm sure. However, so Jodi did have a boyfriend. So his name was Colby. They had been dating since like 8th grade, is what the family had said. So about 5 or 6 years at this point. And he was really just a part of the family, and the family, like, they really liked him. Jennifer described their love not like kids in love. She said it was like an adult forever kind of love. She said it was out of the norm for that age, but she said she knew that they were going to get married and they were going to have kids one day. And she was pretty dead set on that. Like, she didn't seem to be concerned at all. So they didn't think anything about him being involved, but also, like, they realized you kind of have to look into that.
You always have to check the significant other.
Yeah. So police kind of start working on that, but they also are working on like her daily routine. Like, let's start there. So the last time that she was actually seen by anybody was when she was at dance practice. So they talked to everyone on her team. Nobody knew where she was. They asked if there was any weird people hanging around the rehearsals, but like the girls said they didn't think they had seen anybody lately, but also they're not paying super close attention because they're in the middle of all that. And I don't know where they practiced where like people could just come in and watch, but if they're in like a gym or something, and other college students or out on a field sometimes, I don't know.
I mean, in January, you're going to be inside. But...
Oh, yeah, it was January. So, yeah, that's true. I guess if they're in a college area, people could probably just come and go, and I don't know. But Jodi had also been, like, helping coach the high school cheerleading team because that's, where she came from, and she was good at that. So, the officer Wallace, he went to the high school basketball game that was going on at that time because he wanted to see if she would maybe show up there, and maybe it was all a miscommunication. So he goes there, he doesn't see her, but he talks to tons of different students, and nobody really has any idea where she is. No one has talked to her. So they really start just a full-blown search at this time, which is kind of surprising, but like, it just depends on the case because, like he said, some cases, like, they wait for a while. Oh, they're old enough and now, but
well, when it's a small town too, and she's so active in her community, and if you're going and like community members are like, no, we haven't seen her today, I think then that's like, well, this is weird.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I mean, she was super close with her family. And I think the fact that her sister was pregnant really played a big part of them knowing something was wrong because they're like, she's been looking forward to this for 9 months, she's not going to just up and leave, especially when it's like time to give birth. So, they like look around everywhere and they're kind of still not hoping, but I guess in this case they were, that it was maybe just an accident and she was somewhere where she couldn't move or get out and needed help. So they searched all the different ditches, the main routes and the roads, all the back roads, everything. And they found no signs of any kind of accident or any signs of her vehicle even. So at this point then, it's only been about 14 hours since she went missing, and it's crazy how much has really happened already in that short amount of time. So Officer Wallace, he was working like pretty much 24/7 too at this point. I mean, I know it's still early on, but he was there all the time, and they decided to call the news station in Wichita, which I think is the closest city to them. So they wanted them to put that in their news too and broadcast it so they could hopefully get some calls and see if anyone had seen her car or seen her or any of that. So while that's going on too, kind of back to the boyfriend, they were having a hard time like tracking him down, which is kind of like a red flag as well. But he had been living there in Arc City, and he was kind of waiting for Jodi to finish college, which obviously she still had some time there, but he was still just living there and I think working there. But they found that he had actually went down to Texas to visit his brother. So police finally get him when he's back, and they talk to him. And they were, really thinking like maybe they had just run off together and like she didn't want her family to know, but that just wasn't her. So,
right.
And Colby seems like genuinely concerned about her. And so at that point, they are able to confirm his alibi, and his digital footprint was all there that he had been in Texas with his brother. So there was nothing to indicate he was involved at all. I was relieved for that because I was like, if they had such a good special relationship and love, like I don't like it always makes you sad then when stuff like that happens because then it's like, who can you trust,
Well, and then too, like for her family to lose potentially both of them at the time if he had done something, like it already was enough.
Yeah.
But when you have someone who's so close to your family already who is the perpetrator, then it's like
double whammy. Yeah. It's awful. So that was kind of a relief, but also like they're really not any closer to finding anything. So meanwhile, I don't really know how long it had been. It was still within like that first 48-hour time frame. Jennifer was like 3 days overdue with her baby.
Ugh.
And finally, she said someone came up to her, like her mom, I think it was like, okay, you're not really eating, you're not sleeping, you're dehydrated. Like this is not good for anybody. You need to go to the hospital. So she goes to the hospital and they immediately tell her like she's in active labor. So who knows how long she had been.
Well, see, I was going to say, I'm surprised that the stress of this didn't kick her into labor.
No. And she was so right though. Like she talks about, so she had her baby, which was hard because Jodi wanted to be there, but she said that God knew that they needed a baby, and they needed a baby at that time because it really helped keep their family sane and give them something else to focus on, which like how hard. I feel like that just sucks because that ruins that experience for you and hinders that.
Right.
But I mean, at the same time, it's nice to have something. But yeah, so that's when Emma Jolie Mayfield was born. So her middle name is actually a combination of Jodi and Leanne, which was Jodi's middle name. So they gave her, I think that's cute, Jolie. And they actually talked to Emma in this documentary, and she's like, 16, 17 now. She's gorgeous. She was very well spoken too for being that age.
A teenager.
And yeah, and we'll kind of come back to her a little bit more later. But so that's going on. But then, of course, back to the whole, like, what's going on with Jodi. There were tips coming in, and there was a tip about a guy that would hang around the gym when the dance team was practicing, but he hadn't really been around lately. But I don't know who even thought of this. And I thought, well, why didn't the dance team, none of them mention this before, unless they didn't see him and it was someone else that mentioned him? You'll find out later. Some of it's kind of weird. Like,
well, didn't he? Because I just remember this from Small Town.
Yeah.
Like, he would leave, like, roses and notes on some of the girls' cars and stuff.
Yeah, he's a creep. So that's what I don't understand, though, why the girls wouldn't have remembered that when they talked to the police, but whatever. So he, he was a little too interested in Jodi. His name is Justin Thurber. And they said that he would, watch them. And then different girls had different stories about him, like, following them. One girl said that he was following her, and she finally, the only way she got him to go away was when she pulled into a police station. And stuff like that. But I'm like, why is this just now coming up? Like, I don't know why. Some of this, I thought, why wouldn't you mention this right away? Like, well, there is this guy that's been stalking us, but
if you're so used to it too,
that's true.
But it's also like, if it got to the point where he followed you, I can't remember, because listening to the Small Town Murder is usually when I'm falling asleep. I can't remember, like, did she report him to the police, or like she was going to and then she decided to just drive home or something?
Yeah, she said he had left, so then she just went home. So she was like, it's fine, he's gone. So, like, police knew of him, and he was just, like, a petty criminal. Nothing, like, violent. It was, shoplifting, weed. There were a couple reports of him, like, fighting with his girlfriend, that kind of thing. But he was actually they had recently talked with him, not because of anything related to Jodi, but he had come in to the police station and was, like, wanted to be a bounty hunter. It was, like, his dream thing.
Right.
And
Yes.
yeah, so, like, they told him, like, "Hey, bro, like, we can't put you on the payroll, but cool. Like, if you know somebody is wanted and you see them and it's in your, that's on you. But cool, let us know." Kind of like a weird thing, right?
Because
So
wasn't he like super into Doc the Bounty Hunter?
yes, that's where this whole dream came from. So about a week before Jodi had disappeared, police got a call from an individual saying that there was somebody at their house insisting they were a police detective and that they needed to come in and they were trying to get in. So they show up and it's him. And he was charged with impersonating a police officer. Because he swore someone was in there that was wanted, so he like took it to the extreme. So that was like the little bit that they had kind of run in with him lately. So like he was kind of fresh on their mind, but not in something like this. It was weird things like that. So they also had gotten a call that came in that somebody said they had seen Jodi in her car the day that she had gone missing. They saw her at like I think they said it was like a four-way stop type thing. And they said, though, she wasn't driving the car and that she was in the passenger side and there was a male driving. And whoever it was that had seen her in the car, they said they tried calling her when they saw her to say hi, like, I saw you, and she didn't answer. So, but nothing about like the male driving the car or any of that. So when they go to Justin's house to kind of ask him a little bit about all of this, now that the dance team girls were kind of, ratting him out a little bit. They didn't want him to know that they were going in regards to Jodi. So they went and said, like, we need to talk to you about the case with your police impersonation. So I don't know how far they got with that part, but then they do ask him where he was the day that she had gone missing. And he was like, said that he was out past the state lake that was nearby. He said he was out there with a few guys and that they had gotten stuck in the mud. And then they had an argument. And so he just decided he was just going to walk home. So he started walking home from this lake. He called his dad to come pick him up. And he lived with his parents or dad. I'm not sure the situation there. But the dad was in the home when the police were talking to him. And the dad's like, confirmed it. Yeah, he did call me and I did come pick him up. Which I'm like, that's still not, I mean, of course, a parent's probably going to lie for their kid in some of these situations.
Well, but even if you did pick him up, if there was a man driving Jodi's car.
Yeah, exactly. So like, it could have been. And he said that he was like really muddy, dirty, and wet when he picked him up because they were trying to get their truck out because it was stuck in the mud. So first of all, too, why the hell are you out at a lake in January? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
even if there's no snow on the ground,
yeah,
like in the Midwest, most likely it's pretty cold.
Yeah. I'm like, unless you're probably out there doing stuff you shouldn't be if you're out there. Right. But I don't know, like that's sketchy. So the police obviously get the names of these guys that he was with, right? So one of the guys actually was in Texas at the time that he said that he had been at the lake, and they were able to confirm this with his cell phone records and his credit card usage and all that. Another one of the guys was actually at the courthouse getting a marriage license, and they have video surveillance of that. And one of the guys, I don't know, he even made a comment about like, Justin's a weirdo, like I'm not even friends with him, I have nothing to do with this guy. So
like, if you're gonna lie about your alibi, make sure it's solid.
People are gonna lie for you too.
Yeah.
Sure. Like, whatever. So since I don't really have anything though tying him to Jodi, they get a warrant to arrest him for impersonating the police officer, so they can kind of bring him in for that. So they get him there for that, and then in the meantime, they get a warrant to search his house just based on the probable cause that there are some things connected to him. So they know they don't have a lot of time that they can even hold him on that charge because it's not like hefty.
I mean, it's big, but like nothing major happened with it. There's only so long you can hold for.
Right. So they're like working overtime here. So in his house, they end up taking his Adidas shoes, the clothes that he had worn at that day, and some other items. So they're looking fast and furious to find something to hold him, because that's still like not enough to hold him on something more, but they just know that there's more to it. Like, why would you lie about being out of the lake?
Again, as we like to say, we're not trying to tell you how to get away with murder, but why do you still have that shit just laying around as dirty as it is? Especially
That's what I thought.
Even if I wasn't, even if I wasn't doing something shady, if my clothes are soaking wet and muddy, they're immediately going in the washing machine.
No shit. I mean, we're not working with the, brightest crayon here, but still.
Fair.
Yeah. So, okay. So then they, like look into his past a little bit more. And they talk to his ex-girlfriend. I don't know how long they had been dating, but apparently long enough that they felt that she had important information. So, she did say that he had been violent with her like several times, both physically and sexually. And just
because didn't she have a little girl? I thought.
I don't know.
Like in small. Okay, because
she might have, but I didn't.
I'm thinking. Again, in Small Town Murder, I feel like they said that maybe he lived with her for a minute and she had like lived in a trailer and she had a young daughter or something like that. I don't remember. Maybe. Don't quote me.
I don't really go into her that much, only because
it's not necessarily pertinent.
Yeah. So that very well could be. But I mean, obviously she had enough of valuable information for them to use to know that, because it's kind of because of her that they really get a big break in this case. Because the police, they have this information from her, but they kind of don't know where to go with it. And so they decide like, hey, how about we drive around and just show us some of the places that like Justin likes to go and drive around. Because I think he liked to just do that. Like some people just like to go on drives. And so, because at first I was like, that's a kind of weird thing to do. But I remember another case where there was a similar situation where they had someone drive around and they were able to point out different places that they remembered. So she goes along with this, and she, they're driving around the town, and they kind of go back around the state lake area, and they call that, it's like the Caw Wildlife Area. And she said that Justin had told her once that you could kill someone and put them back there and nobody would ever find the body. So naturally, like, okay, the cops are like, well, this is, coming together. So now that they know that, they decide to just have detectives kind of go out and check that area, because they don't really have anything else to go off of anyway. So they actually get trackers to go out there, and because there's shoe prints. The shoe prints out there have the Adidas emblem on them, and another print that looks like it could possibly be like a flip-flop. So Ron Cannon, he's like the senior instructor at this Blue Line tracking, and he was legit. And he was talking about tracking and how it's really like a lost art, because you could really get viable information, or evidence and stuff at crime scenes from this that people know what they're looking for.
Right.
So he's out there tracking, and there's only a few of them, just so they don't, ruin anything with the footprints. So the shoe prints, the Adidas ones and stuff, it kind of goes down to like that pit toilet area. Like, how state parks have like little stations of like bathrooms and like they're gross, but they're there. So they follow these muddy footprints all the way in there. And it goes like inside to this bathroom. So they're going into the stalls and checking. In the very first stall they open, there's stuff stuffed in the toilet, and sticking out of it is mail with Brian Sanderholm's name on it. So it was floating in the toilet, and his name was still, what's the word I'm looking for? Legible. I was gonna say edible, and I'm like, that's not the right word. Okay. So so that's on there. It was gross. It was covered in feces and all the things. Like, who goes in there and says, oh, I'm gonna use this toilet, even though there's stuff? I mean, I guess people.
I guess if you're trying to like hide evidence.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that could be it, because I don't know. But
I guess like maybe he did it himself, or he found one that someone didn't flush and did it.
That's disgusting. But or it could have been in there already and he just put it in there too. Like, you know what I mean? Anyway, doesn't matter, but it was there. So they know that they're at least kind of on the right track of things. And just knowing that simple step of her not getting the mail not bringing in the mail that day was like good because that kind of helped them give them a starting point. So then, of course, because they find that, they check the other toilets. And in another toilet, they find one flip-flop. They saw what was possibly a leotard. And as they're looking further in the toilet, they see something orange. They can't quite tell what that is. So they hook it, pull it out. And it was Jodi's tigerette jacket, like part of the team, that dance team that she was on. So, Officer Wallace, he goes to work the next day at like 4 a.m. He said he needed to like mentally prepare because he knew that he needed to contact the Sanderholms. And at this point, things weren't looking good. They still had hope because like there was really nothing. So they knew that, yeah, something though had happened, because if you're missing your clothing that you would have had on at that point, like probably not pointing to good signs. So January 9th, it's only been 4 days since she's been missing. So that was the next day. So they go search that area in more detail where the mail and all that stuff was found. They looked everywhere and they really couldn't find anything. So they bring in a dive team that's to scan the lake in hopes that maybe they find something there. And he said that like they put the boat in, and once they turned on their sonar. I said that weird. I know. I'm like, I even know how to say that. It's okay. But within like 30,
words are hard.
Yeah. And when you're talking and know that people are listening to you, it's even harder, no pressure, but they said within like 30 seconds they find her car. And they know it's her car because they're down there and they take pictures of like the license plate and everything, and they confirm it's her. So they pull it out, and their thought is that she's probably in the car. But once they get it out, nope, nobody in the car. And not really any signs of like a struggle or anything in there. And also like evidence would have been destroyed, most likely being in the water for 4 days. So, the tracking team was still working though, and they were looking for different prints, and they do see a track of where tennis shoes are walking and a set of flip-flops. And they're walking together, and then they get to a point where the flip-flops are gone, and then just the Adidas shoes continue into the woods. So they follow those tracks deeper into the woods. And then once you get further in there, there's really just, like in the deep woods, it's going to be a lot of brush and branches and that kind of thing. So they're looking, and as they get closer, they see a hand sticking out of the brush. And Cannon said that when they found that, they all just stopped. He said there was 4 of them there, and they stopped and they just took a moment and they were all quiet. Nobody said anything. He said it was just a very somber moment, and they knew at that point not to go any further because they didn't want to contaminate the crime scene. So,
well, because at that point you're going to know it's been 4 days. She's clearly nude because her clothes are all stuffed in the toilet. And so with how cold it would have gotten, at least overnight, even if it wasn't, freezing. There's in 4 days being nude in that area.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, even if it wasn't her and it was someone else, like, you don't want to ruin a crime scene. No. But like, they just see her hand because she had been covered with tons of branches and things, obviously trying to conceal her body. So this area that she was found in, it was so heavily wooded. They actually had to cut down trees just to get their vehicles in there to like process that crime scene. So during the process of having to cut down trees and figure out ways to get in there, they also found a hair tie of hers, some of her hair, in kind of an area where it looked like a scuffle had just happened. So once they do get in there, they, realize that is her body under this big pile of tree logs. They said the only reason they really found her was because her hand was sticking out. Wallace said it was really like she had her hand out like, hey, here I am, come find me. That was his quote. So
that's heartbreaking.
Very sad. So after they got the logs removed, she was naked and she had actually been posed. So yeah, Wallace said it was one of the most gruesome scenes he's ever seen, and he had seen a lot of them. So they notify the family, of course, and when they talk to Brian, he says he doesn't really even remember anything from that day, and he said literally the next 3 years were just like a blur to him, and he couldn't really tell you anything. So police are really working to connect Justin to this. So, they have the tracking team come to Jodi's house as well, which I don't know how many people had come and gone from there at that
right
point.
at that point.
But the tracking team, I mean, they know what they're looking for, and they were able to find partial shoe prints that matched the shoes that Justin had been wearing. And this was at her house. So they are able to piece that he had gotten to her there at some point. Who knows how he got her back in the car, but she had gotten out and got the mail and then got back in the car. She never actually went inside.
Yeah.
So, they do the autopsy, and it shows that the cause of death was ligature strangulation. They said you could see a line still around her neck, and they think he used either like a cord or a piece of clothing, something thin. And this is pretty crazy, but one of her major arteries in her neck had been severed. And the pathologist said that they think that she had been hit hard enough in the head with something that she had twisted her head and her neck so far that's what caused it to tear.
Oh my God.
Isn't that insane?
Oh,
yeah. There was also evidence of torture and sexual assault. So we'll just leave that at that.
Yeah.
So officially on June 9th, I don't know why it took so long, but June 9th of 2007, Thurber is charged with the rape and murder of Jodi. So during the whole process of like investigating and putting a case together, they learn a lot more about Justin. So come to find out, Jennifer, Jodi's sister, when she had heard his name, she knew it was familiar, but she wasn't sure why. Well, he had actually gone to school with her since like kindergarten. So it must not be a small enough town that like she knew him. I mean, and like there's kids, I could see their faces and not be able to tell you their names, you know?
Yeah.
But she didn't really know him. They knew that he lived like a couple blocks away from them. But then they had found out later through Justin, I think, and through interviews, he had actually been stalking Jennifer back in the day when she was like 13.
Ew.
He would walk over by their house and he would sit across the street in this like wooded area and he would just like watch her swim in the backyard. And he talked about watching her undress in her room. I don't know. So like clearly this has been a pattern with him for a long time.
At such a young age.
Yes. So major stalking tendencies, and then we know how that usually goes and it escalates.
Yeah, I'm surprised it took him this long.
I know. Then. And then it makes you wonder if there's other cases. I mean, they don't talk about him being tied to anything else, but
with
like,
how sloppy he was with this one, though, it almost seems like,
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it was enough to have a girlfriend to abuse.
I guess, yeah. And so, yeah. So then, he goes to court for all of this in trial, whatever. So this is in February of 2009. So the prosecution shows proof of him stalking and harassing several women in the city. They actually found out too, I don't know why this wasn't brought up sooner, but the day that Jodi went missing, he had actually been pulled over on campus and got a speeding ticket that day. And they have the footage of him and stuff. I don't know why that didn't get brought up, but he was obviously stalking her that day because he had been on campus. So, of course they used that and the footprints, to nail him for that. But then the final thing was that Jodi had fought back because his DNA was under her nails, thankfully. So he was found guilty of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances, aggravated rape, aggravated kidnapping, and he was sentenced to death. So, yeah. So now it's been 17 years, and he's still sitting in death row in Kansas.
I mean, they always
fighting appeals. Right, because that's how that goes. I had even read where he said he would confess to the crime if they took the death penalty off the table. And her family was like, no, that's fine. We know you did it. We don't need you to confess.
I was like, there's enough evidence. You have her body. Even if the only way that works for you is if they don't have her body.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? And
gives you some closure
of her body is.
There's nothing that he can do to make this any better or worse.
We don't need you to confess.
No.
She had your DNA.
Yeah, we know it was you. You piece
minus
of shit.
the DNA, you left so much evidence with your shoe prints and things like that. No, we don't need you to admit you did it. We know you did.
Right. We don't care. We actually hope you die in there. And I hope he looked rough to begin with. And I saw a picture of him now and I was like, prison not been good to him. So
No.
good.
Yeah.
So I know I had mentioned her niece earlier, so kind of back to her. So Emma, apparently she does a lot of like pageants and stuff, and I don't know what she's won a bunch because I saw some pictures of her. And she says that she actually uses her platform to spread the word about Jodi's Law. So Jodi's Law was actually, created by her family. This is passed in New Mexico and Kansas. So her law basically kind of broadens the definition of what stalking is, and it makes it easier to prosecute. So
We need
I think that's
so
really
much
cool.
more everywhere.
Yeah, I know. I was like, that's crazy that that's only in those 2 states. I mean, hopefully in more. I mean, I'm glad that it has gotten to that point. But so I thought that was really neat with her, like kind of a good way to close that out and stuff. But I mean, we can put resources in there for stalking and stuff too, because I read a lot of different things about that while I was researching this case. And it's just a sad, sad case. And like, I think just everyone should be careful. And I think that that's the scary thing is like, this was in the middle of the day. She was at her own house walking inside, you know, like.
Yeah. Comes back to us talking about locking our doors, you know, during the day even, which granted, it probably sounds to me like she grabbed the mail, she was walking back up, and he probably came up. It was like, get in the car. You know, he probably had something to threaten her.
Yep. Very sad case. But yes, that is the case. I had never heard of it until I watched that episode on it. And I was like, how have I not heard this? This is kind of a big thing.
Right. Yeah, no, I hadn't heard of it until the Small Town Murder episode. So.
Well, and it's funny, like this show, I love this show because, I mean, their focus, since it's called How I Caught My Killer, is the focus of what, you know, piece of evidence it was that they left behind. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, good. It's like signs for if you're getting murdered, make sure you do this, you know, but like,
I know,
you don't want it to come to that, but yeah.
No, and that's so tough.
Personal safety.
Yeah.
Totally. So yeah, that is the case of Jodi. And don't love bomb someone, I guess, either, because that can be creepy and weird. So
I mean, love bombing is problematic in so many ways because it's usually a sign of an abuser. And
right. So that's what I'm like, okay, I could see some of these people thinking like, oh, that's nice of this guy, like initially, but then when it escalates, it's like, no, friends. But and I wish he would have been stopped sooner, you know, like if someone would have turned some of that in. Not that he would have necessarily been held on that.
Right, because
it help.
Yeah, that's so difficult. Well, and then it's one of those things too that you're almost like, okay, I guess when you're in those smaller towns, you're probably just like, oh, he's just the local weirdo, you know what I mean? And you kind of get used to it. But it's like, also, it's like, then maybe it would have been one of those things, which granted, she wasn't taken from the college parking lot. But at the same time, like having security then driving around and making sure he's not there when those girls are practicing and stuff like that. It's just, it's so hard. And it's so, you know, when you're that young too, like as women, a lot of times we grow up knowing the things we have to watch for, but sometimes which sucks, you know what I mean? But also sometimes when you're that young, you just feel invincible and you're like, that's not going to happen to me. You know, I'm going to be safe. And 9 times out of 10, yeah, you are. And it sucks that we have to worry about that. And not to say men aren't victims. I'm not saying young teen boys aren't victims, but as women, there's so much more that we have to be aware of and to look out for. And that really sucks. It's like at work, there's this sweet young girl who's 18. She's about to go to college. And I was already like, I gave her my Birdie because I was like, she was getting ready to move to Tennessee. And I was like, I need you to take this. And now there's a change of plans. She's not leaving till later, but I still gave it. She's like, I was telling her, I was like, you need this, whatever. And I gave it to her. She's like, wait, this is for me. I was like, I just need you to have this because I was like, I would have ordered her own. But at that time, I thought she was leaving right then. I wasn't going to see her again. So I was like, take this. I was like, you can get the subscription for this, you know, all of that stuff. Because I was like, I just need you to be safe. Like, she's so sweet and so kind, you know, and it's like, be safe.
I know. It's scary. Yeah,
it's so scary. So yeah, you know. Oh man, I just wish, you know, but yeah, so you guys be safe out there. Teach both your sons and your daughters and, you know, your children to be safe, to watch out for each other. And if anyone makes them feel uncomfortable, to say something, you know, like, it's just, it's heartbreaking.
I know. It is really heartbreaking. It's scary and it's a sad world, but
it is.
It's a good reminder when you hear stories like this. So
it is.
Anyway, I mean, yeah. Follow us on all the things like usual. Please talk about us to your friends. I had an open house for my daughter's school the other night, and a teacher I have never met whispered to me and said, "I hear you talk about murder stuff." And I was like, it got weird. I had never met her in my life. And then she kind of said, "Well, so-and-so told me." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." She goes, "I'm a huge murderino." And I was like, okay. So then I was like, oh, I'll have my kid give you the info because she loves to do that. But it was really funny. So
Mr. Jordan texted me a week or so ago, and he was like, hey, where exactly can you listen to all this stuff or whatever? I am getting you new listeners. I was like, you're the best. Thank you.
Love it.
I was like, anywhere. So
yeah,
you guys, like, rate, review, share, follow, all those things. It's all in the show notes. So yeah, you guys know, until next time, stay Heartland kind.
Yeah, but Darkland wary.